Good evening. We welcome you to our City Council meeting tonight. I've asked Councilman Staley, Councilman Turek if he'll give us our invocation, and Councilman Staley if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Bow our heads and look before thee as the City Council meeting. We do so with gratitude and thanks in our hearts, Father. Many blessings and God to provide us. Especially grateful and thankful for this great land, blessed with being part of, freedoms and opportunities that we enjoy. Grateful for this great community in which we are able to live in, those great citizens, those friendships, relationships to enjoy this. Father, we're grateful for the moisture that thou hast blessed us with. We pray that thou will continue to send more to meet our needs. We pray now that as we conduct the business of the city this night, we might do so with thy guidance and direction, and keeping in mind the needs and prosperity of all of our citizens. We pray that thou would help us to be wise and prudent in our decisions. We seek special blessings upon those great men and women who are serving in our country to protect our freedoms and opportunities, and also those who are serving our community. Watch over and keep us safe. We pray for their safety at this time, and blessings to be upon them and upon our families for their service. We again give thanks for all that thou does for us. We seek blessings at this time. In thy Son, Jesus Christ.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll go on to item 1, approval of the agenda.
A motion that we approve the agenda as outlined.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Nice night.
Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Sig Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item 2, announcements. Is there any announcements to be brought forth at this time? Okay. Item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Any to declare at this time, gentlemen? Now we'll move on to our consent agenda, approval of the minutes, consideration to approve the minutes. City Council meetings of 7/8, 7/9, and 7/22/2014. Our board audit report to approve the board audit report for June and July.
There's no discussion. I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as outlined.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Sig Miller, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Nice night. Thank you. Those are approved. Item 5, public hearings and related ordinances. Continuation of a public hearing for consideration to approve an ordinance adopting the Washington City Stormwater Capitals Facilities Master Plan, which includes impact fee facility plan, impact fee study, user fee study. Mike Shaw. Or Lester Dolphin.
Council, Mayor? Yeah, I was trying to get out of it, but he wasn't going to let me. I assume everybody's had time, more than ample time, in the last, we postponed this for 30 days. The last time we brought it and gave Southern Utah Home Builders Association an opportunity to review it. With that, this is, we didn't have a whole lot of public here at the previous meeting. It was a workshop meeting. Kind of like to turn it over to Ray and have him go through the slide presentation again and bring everybody up to speed and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ray Alton. I'm an engineer with Rosenberg Associates, and we were hired by Washington City to prepare the capital facilities plan. I think Lester's going to hook us up here with the slides. Okay, let's go to that right there. we went through this in the work meeting, so I'll kind of briefly summarize these slides, and then we can talk about any questions that you might have. The purpose of the stormwater impact fee. An impact fee is a fee that is imposed by a local government on a new development project to pay for all or a portion of the costs of providing public services to the new development. Okay. So for our stormwater impact fee, we considered an improvement project eligible for impact fees if it could be tied to changes in the drainage patterns or conveyance means due to future development. So some of examples of that were if a current drainage pattern needed to be preserved for future development, such as the need to create a right-of-way for an existing wash that will be encroached upon by development. So that was one kind of project that you'd see in your example there when you went through the document. Another one is if a current drainage pattern was altered by future development of the area or upstream such that as an irrigation canal that will be replaced by a future storm drain pipeline underneath an upgraded roadway. So if it was a field and a subdivision came in and the field was no longer there, could no longer carry the flows, then a project would need to be there to take that stormwater back to a safe place of discharge without flooding the properties. Okay. So since the CFP update was introduced, we first introduced it in February, and then we were asked to go back and make some changes, and we did make those changes. We also have reviewed the recent letter that we received from SUBA, and we're willing to do some clarifications as well with SUBA if we need to in that light as well. So the way we determined the impact fee is we developed a computer model, modeled the stormwater for the 100-year 3-hour design storm, which is the city standard. When we did the model, we looked for deficiencies. In other words, we compared the peak flow values that came out of the model, how much water is running down this road, and then we looked at that road, for example, to see if it was able to handle the flows or if it wasn't. If it was not able to handle the flows, then we identified a project. Once we identified a project, we had to determine whether or not it was a project that would be needed for new development. In that case, it would be eligible for impact fees, or if it was something that was just caused by existing conditions, development that was already in place, and those were assigned to the user fee. Okay, in the model we divided the city into 8 major drainage basins. There were actually 93 basins defined in the model, but there were 8 major basins defined. And we broke it up that way just so you could see the difference in costs between where the needs are and maybe where there weren't so many needs. And so that's kind of a summary of the 8 major basins that were defined there in the model. And then to summarize that, this is kind of a table showing the total project costs in each of those basins, the developable acreage in those basins remaining, and then the per acre impact fee per basin. And then at the bottom is the total, if you average that total cost by the total developable area, then that bottom number is kind of the impact fee for the city at large. Up to this point, the fee has been assessed for the city as a whole. This is another way you can look at it. I mean, if you want to confine that development cost to that basin, you can do that. That's been done in other municipalities. Or you can continue with just a citywide fee of the $4,200 there.
What's our current fee?
$46.30? $46.30 per acre. Okay, we recommend that the impact fee be applied at the time the plat is recorded. That's the current city standard. When you record the final plat, they usually assess the fee at that time. And kind of the way they do it is they take the total area divided by the number of lots, and that's the fee per lot in that development. If there is a plat that's already been recorded and the fee wasn't collected, we proposed another method that how you could kind of calculate that impact fee for an area that would fall under that condition as well. And that's in the document. The storm drain user fee, there were 5 projects we identified, and they were all located in the main part of town here, kind of along these streets here in this area. And I don't know if you want to click to the table on that table T2, or kind of show the recommended fee there. Is it not there? Okay. Basically, if you take the cost of those projects and spread it out over a 10-year window, we calculated that the impact fee would stay at about $6 per month per user, which is what it is, I think, right now. Is that right? About $6. So you'd be able to fund those 5 projects within the next 10 years if you kept the fee where it is.
You're talking specifically which area? Are you talking one specific area or citywide on the user fee?
The user fee is citywide, but the 5 projects were identified were right here in this, kind of the older part of town here.
Okay.
South of I-15, north of Telegraph, there's a handful of streets, and then just south of Telegraph, there's another project that's identified right there, kind of tying back into 300 East, going down behind that community right there, that mobile home park community right down through there. So there's a map of it right there. Okay, that's all I have unless you have any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. This is a public hearing. I'm sure some of you out there are quite interested in this. So if you have any comments or suggestions or thoughts, we'd love to entertain those. So come on up.
Hi, I'm Mari Smith, and I'm the Executive Officer for the Southern Utah Home Builders Association. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to comment today. And we also want to express our appreciation to the Council and to the City staff for involving SUBA in this process. We represent about 540 of the local building industry professionals. We are the largest in the state of Utah. And given our population, that's considerable that we're the largest in the state. So we feel it's very important that we are involved in the impact fee study process. As all of us realize, we can all agree that these studies are very detailed and they're very complex. And so we actually have a professional consultant, Craig Call and Jonathan Call. They're with Anderson, Call, and Wilcox, and they're located in Salt Lake, but they have done many reviews of impact studies throughout the state. They've actually challenged certain cities, and they've been able to prove, that these studies weren't done properly. So anyways, but we appreciate it, and we did submit questions and concerns. And thank you to the engineers involved for getting back to us regarding our questions. We do still have some concerns. We have a couple big areas on both the stormwater and the public safety, and I know we'll talk about public safety in a little bit. So, so I just want to read a statement in regards to that. We found areas of concerns and would like to recommend to the City Council and the City staff that we delay adopting these plans until the studies can be revised and the issues can be addressed. We have been transparent with the city staff in forwarding the detailed issues throughout this process. The engineers who prepared the studies sent letters in response to our concerns, and again, we still have concerns about that. In regards to the concerns, each of the impact fee analysis studies that were reviewed still contains at least one fundamental error which negatively impacts the entire impact fee structure used in the calculation of the impact fees. Regarding the stormwater, it clearly indicates in the analysis that no new stormwater shall be introduced into the system by new development, and as a result, no new development has any impact on the stormwater system. And so this was language actually as part of the analysis stating that the new impact does not have, new development does not have impact on the citywide system. And so I did send a letter today to the city manager and also the mayor with a detailed explanation on this, and I do have extra copies that we'd be more than happy to give to you. Another area of concern is in regards to the current stormwater impact fee is $4,630 per acre. And we do understand that our proposal is on the table to assess by area. I would like to give you an example. The Washington Fields area right now is paying $4,630. If this is to be adopted, it would increase to $6,222 per acre. That's an increase of $1,592 per acre. And in addition, the Washington Dam area would be affected significantly as well. Now, we do realize that the Green Springs area is on a separate stormwater system, and their impact fee would go from $4,630 to $2,014 per acre. SUBA is not taking a position on this. I know that we have developers on both sides, but we do want to note that we were told that there are no other cities in Utah that assess impact fees by area. And I don't have that. Someone told me that, so if the engineers or someone would like to mention something different on that, that would be good. So anyways, we strongly oppose having a stormwater impact fee increase substantially like that. Washington City, we've actually seen a review, and already Washington City, without this increase, the impact fees, you know, you're the third highest in the area right now, and our records show Washington with no police, the impact fee is $13,803. And then St. George actually just modified their impact fees. They went from $11,008 down to $10,660. So that's important to note. Let's see. And then, you know, I just want to make a statement. And again, I don't know how detailed you want me to go into the concerns with the stormwater impact fee. I don't want to take longer than what's necessary, but we do have some concerns on that. And I do want to remind the council about impact fees, and we all know when impact fees are raised, it goes on to the price of the home. And it wasn't that long ago that we had a huge issue with lack of affordable housing in our area. And so the National Association of Home Builders just came out with a study, and for every $1,000 increase in a new home price, it leads to pricing out over 206,000 households nationwide out of the market based on a median price of a new home. And that's based on wages, and we know it varies from market to market. But every time impact fees increase, it does increase the price of the home. And so I just want to leave you with that. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, actually, I do. Just a point of clarification, I guess, as I'm looking at this, assuming that the impact fees are applied across the board and not segmented by neighborhoods, it's actually a decrease.
Correct.
In the fee.
That's right.
And then, as I understand what you're saying, is if the new development is not allowed to put any water into the system, is it SUBA's position that they should not have an impact fee? They shouldn't be responsible for any part of the stormwater?
Yeah, if new development has no impact on the system, then yes, there should not be an impact fee.
And you believe that there's no impact come in when somebody puts the development in? some drainage mechanism brought to that development?
Well, it's based on the language of the analysis the way it's stated now. If there's different things, you could revise your on-site detention requirements, and those could be modified. We have pointed out specific language in the analysis that actually says it's not Suva's opinion, it's actually what's mentioned in the analysis.
And I'm just trying to think without parsing over words, I'm trying to get to the bottom of the real issue here. And I know we had a meeting last night in a workshop where we talked about we're going to hold some of the water on site and eventually it gets into the city system. So I assume, there's always going to be something that ends up into the system. And I have a hard time thinking that Suva will say these developers shouldn't pay anything. The citizens ought to bear the cost.
And we're not saying that. If there is an impact on the system, then absolutely there should be an impact fee. But the way the wording in the analysis, and we have pointed out specific language, and I have copies I can give each one of you right now. We're just asking for more time that these concerns actually be addressed in the analysis, and so that it's clear. So, but in no way am I inferring if a new development has impact on the system that impact fees should not be paid on that. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
No other questions? Thank you. Any others?
Jim Raines, I sent all of you a letter and some information last week and then followed up with some additional information this week. Hopefully y'all got that. Basically, our position is that we support the methodology that Rosenberg used in the storm drain capital facilities plan. The reason we do is because there is no interconnectivity of the proposed improvement projects. A water system, you put a water tank in, it connects to the distribution of the city, which goes citywide and becomes a benefit citywide. Sewer flows to a common trunk lines that go to a common sewer treatment plant, so there's interconnectivity in your sewer system. Your roads can have collector arterial roads that the local roads connect to provide an interconnected transportation system. I can go on and on and on. But with the storm drain, the study clearly shows that these drainages are independent of each other. They all flow to the Virgin River, but there's no improvements slated in the capital facilities plan for the Virgin River. So each improvement is directly related to the region that it's in. So I support the methodology that was used to do the zonal or the basin impact fee because those fees are proportionate. Personally, it helps us in one area but hurts us in another. But because state law requires that your impact fee be proportionate to your impact, it's very difficult at this point where your study shows that the impact is based on a basin, and there's no interconnectivity, to ask a landowner in one area to pay for an improvement in another area when those systems aren't connected.
So is your position that if I take that to the logical extreme,
Yeah.
the $6 monthly fee should be readjusted to really be taxed in the area where the people need the improvements?
No, I'm not talking about user fee. I'm talking about the impact
It's the
fee.
same issue, though. If one area is benefited by it, not the others,
No,
then
but
everything ought to be segregated.
I wouldn't carry it that far because I don't think user fee had to operate under the same regulation as impact
Yeah,
fees.
but-
Impact fees say
Yeah.
that the impact of
I understand that, Jim, but
Yeah.
I think the logical conclusion of your position is it ought to be segmented where it's needed. They can take that position
Yeah.
and they ought to redo what the downtown impact fee is for the user fees.
well, your impact fee for downtown improvements are in your user fees, and the logic for that was that it was already developed, and that so you're charging people in Washington Fields $1.73 a month to put a storm drain fee in the downtown part of St. George, or downtown part of
I
Washington.
thought it was $6 a month.
It's $6 a month, but only $1.73 of that is for improvements. So you're charging everybody in town $1.73 to put improvements in the old part of Washington City. I'm just saying that that is an appropriate thing if it's an existing condition. So one, we support the methodology of breaking it out by basin. I think that's logical. I think that's is what you have to do according to the impact fee law, and I think this your own commission study supports that. So we just support your study. We're not arguing that your study, I think it was done correctly.
And I just want to put on
Yeah.
the record, if my recollection's correct, you're trying to do a lot of development in Green Springs, right?
I got property in Green Springs, but my larger development is Washington Dam Road, so I'd be negatively impacted by Washington Dam Road. So I have developments in all areas. Yeah. So yeah, am I self-serving in Green Springs? Yes. But the flip side of this is then, as Mari and Suba has pointed out, is it justified? I think they have some good points. I think that you need to look specifically at Washington Dam Road and Washington Fields because there's a unique condition out there. Drainage law is pretty much established. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not going to say quote law, but to paraphrase it is that the water has historically fallen on your land and has fallen on other lands and passed through your lands has a right to continue to do that. The problem with Washington Dam and Washington Fields is that centuries ago we took the natural drainages through those areas and bladed them flat and turned them into fields. That precluded the natural drainage in that area. There are no drainage facilities in those areas to convey water either off those lands or through those lands. And there's been significant money spent by the city and the federal government and the state government to build large basins and large dikes above Washington Fields and Washington Dam to trap all that water because we've got rid of all of the natural drainages through that area. So the landowners in Washington Dam and Washington Fields don't have the benefit of other landowners in other areas that the natural drainage was preserved and maintained. Now when the fields were created, those natural drainages that were laid flat by the fields were supplemented, and the drainages were used by the Washington Canal and the tailwater and the drainage irrigation ditches in the area. It's only been recently, in the last few years, that those were lost. The Washington Canal was piped, so no stormwater, and if you go along there, you'll see basins all along the old Washington Canal that no longer have anywhere to go because they were supposed to overtop and go into the canal. When the canal was piped, that went away. And then downstream, where a lot of the water used to go into the old tailwater ditches, now the irrigation company doesn't allow the water to go into tailwater ditches. So I think you've got a different scenario, and I agree with Mari and Suba, is that those are existing conditions. Those are problems and deficiencies in the system in Washington Fields and Washington Dam Road that exist because of history, not exist because of new development. Now, because you're not allowing any new development to put their post-development flows in that area, I don't think it's appropriate to put the entire burden on new development, which is the $6,200 does and the $5,503 does. So what I proposed in my study, in my analysis that I gave to you, was that you shared the costs in those two areas between new development and the user impact fee, using the exact same rationale, the exact same thing that you did in the Mill Creek area, the $1.73 that you charge in your user fee to pay for the drainages in the old part of town. I don't see that any different than helping to pay for a problem that is historic in Washington Fields and Washington Dam area, and you dilute that. If you would raise your user fee $7 a month, you could lower your impact fee in the fields to $31.11 and in Washington Dam to around $2,500 a thing. So I don't think it's an overburden on the residents of the city, and I think you've already made that philosophical determination by what you're doing in Mill Creek. And I think the biggest problem that home builders have and developers have with impact fees, that it seems like 100% always falls on them. And it's okay that they need to pay their share, but in the fields and in Washington Dam area, you have a condition that isn't that you eliminated by the agriculture development of those areas. You eliminated natural drainages, and that's not the current landowner's problem. We talk about developers and builders. We're talking about landowners and eventually homeowners that are going to pay this fee. So I think it's fair, just as you did in the old part of town, to take a portion of that impact and a portion of those expensive improvements and put citywide on a user fee and share the pain between a user fee and an impact fee, and it would make your impact fees reasonable and proportionate, which you're required to do by law to do. So I think it's a compromise, but I think it's a justified and a defensible compromise. That if it's going to be analyzed, I think you'll see that they'll come up with maybe a different number or a different percentage, but at least the concept is sound.
So Jim, as I hear you saying, we take a field down in the Washington Fields, but over 150 years the farmers have flattened and built their berms and had their channels and their canals. Then that farmer decides to build a housing development on it, and in so doing gets rid of the canals and the berms and reshapes the topography. It's your position that the user should pay for a portion of the new infrastructure that will be required by that farmer's decision to change the use of his land?
Well, I'm just saying over the years, collectively as a whole, when the fields in Washington Dam area become agricultural, it eliminated the natural drainages. It turned them into flat agricultural fields. At that time, the impact to those natural drainages happened. Unfortunately, 150 years ago, you didn't have an impact fee, and you didn't collect for that. So not necessarily the same owner, the same field did it. The guy up here may have done it, but he lost the ability to flow to a natural drainage, so he couldn't take his historic flows, which he has every legal right to do, to put it back in its natural channel. He can't take that, which is all you're trying to charge, because you're not letting developers put in any new flows into your system. They have to detain that. Okay, so you're talking about the scenario that you're doing, that those historic flows, they have to be reconveyed in some way because there's no place for them to go. And I agree, there's no place for them to go. But the reason there's no place for them to go is because they were developed 150 years ago as agricultural fields, and then the alternative that was provided in an agricultural field was the Washington Canal and the irrigation ditches, and just recently we took that away. So you've left the property owners out there with no way to convey their natural flows. There isn't. And so that historic right that they had to convey their natural flows and their pass-through flows, you've eliminated starting 150 years ago with the development of agricultural fields.
Here's my challenge with that is, it's been the property owners who have flattened the fields and changed the natural drainages, and they've been the ones that are the members of the water company that built the canal and then piped the canal. None of that's been the city's actions. The city's just been here while that's all occurred. And so I don't know who's to blame for all of the disruption that's happened over history, but this might be one case where the city didn't have any hand in any of that. It's whatever's happened, and now we're looking at it.
Well, I agree with you, but it's the exact same case as Mill Creek improvements that you've got in your user fee in the old part of town. You're saying because the old part of town developed as residential lots, it's somehow different to impact the drainage because the fields developed in agricultural fields. I'm saying there's not. If you're going to take the methodology and say because a developed area eliminated those historic drainages, we're going to put that on the user fee, that holds just as true in Washington Fields as it does with downtown Washington Townsite. It doesn't matter that one was
we've already done that somewhat because we built the main trunk lines for those storm drain systems out of user fees predominantly, and so we have done exactly what you're talking about. The users have built some infrastructure for nobody but the fields.
Well, I don't see that. I have never seen an allotment in your user fee for any improvements in the fields.
They have been.
I think you would need to justify that if they were. Right now, your $6, only $1.73 of your $6 goes for any improvements. The rest of it's for maintenance, for the $1.50 to the Washington County flood control.
I know when the original user fee went into place, the reason it went into place was to pipe the fields. That's why it went into place, was to start that.
Well, and then that's the case, then I think you could use that as part of the formula to determine that. You know, but all I'm just saying, my point is that you've applied a methodology to the developed part of the town site in the field, but you haven't applied that same methodology to the development of Washington Dam and Washington Fields, and you're putting all of that on the developers and landowners out there, and it's just not proportionate. It's no different scenario, and so I think there's whether my proposal, it's a seat of the pants thing. I didn't give a lot of study. Whether those percentages are things right, I'm not here to argue that. But I'm saying that the methodology should be, what's good for the goose in the old part of town, if the town site eliminated those drainages and now it's on the users, the overall users to 8,000 users in Washington City to help pay for that. Why is that different than the fields in the dam area when the exact same thing occurred? So I think there's some justification to move part of that impact fee to the user fee, whether it's $7 or $2. That's for you to decide. I'm not up here arguing what that number should be. I'm just showed you one example of what it could be and what the impact would be. And it's also a better way to fund it. It's a consistent revenue stream that's not contingent on growth, and it's a bondable revenue stream you could use. So I think there's a lot of advantages to the city to look at that. I don't want to argue the fact. I just think it's an important point that I think was missed in the thing, and I think it's part of the fundamental problem that the building community has in this area, that impact fees all seem to be 100% on them. And if it's 100% on them, that's fine. But in this case, you're not really doing anything for them because you're not handling any of the post-development flows. You're just saying you have to pay $6,000 an acre to fix a problem that we've had for the last 150 years. And it's not fair to put it all in the building community. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think we're still in the public
We
hearing,
are.
but I have a few questions. on this. Lester, or maybe Ray, I'm not sure which of you this is going to be for. As I go through and look at these basin maps, you know, I'll point out the airport basin and maybe the Mill Creek basin one, because they're two that kind of stick in my mind. The projects that are, the impact fee projects that are proposed to be funded through this impact fee they fall in pretty narrow geographic areas within that zone, but there's much larger development areas throughout the whole thing. So how is it that we can justify, let's maybe look at the Mill Creek one. How is it we can justify charging all development acres within that zone this averaged fee for projects that are pretty localized to a certain drainage problem right there?
Okay. Yeah, what you're seeing with those yellow lines is if a raindrop falls anywhere inside that yellow line, it's going to run downhill and keep going downhill until it hits one of those main trunk lines. And so what you're seeing is the topography of the community there, and those are the high points in town that you're seeing with those yellow lines. And so the way that's tied, the way that big pipeline, say, running down one side of that would be tied to that is because a raindrop, if it falls anywhere inside that boundary, will eventually find its way into that line.
And so I guess what my question is, this map doesn't show the proposed projects. There's maps that do. Page 14 of your stormwater capital facility plan is the map that I'm looking at. But you'll see that there's the proposed projects, there they are in green. You'll see that basically they address a problem that's fairly localized right there to that part of town. But if there was somebody down on the the other southwestern corner of that zone that wanted to develop, they'd be paying an impact fee because of the projects up in that part of the basin that really has no relationship to the location where they're developing.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
my challenge is, I understand the logic of breaking it up into zones,
Okay.
but the fact that it's so broken up becomes inequitable to me in the sense that it may be better to just average across the entire city because of the inequities that occur as we try to break it up. And if you were lucky enough to be in the Green Spring zone, by golly, you got lucky, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
When in reality, we don't want development to be a question of getting lucky or not lucky. You don't want to prefer one zone or another zone. If we think there's projects that need to be funded by impact fees,
Right.
I like the idea of averaging it across the entire city because of this example right here.
Right. And there's arguments to be made both ways. And really, we don't really recommend one way or the other. We just show the difference. But the case for developing charging the fee in that area is if the pipeline is needed in that area, that's where the development is happening, then that's what they can fund, is that pipeline. If you have scattered development all over the community and you need a big pipeline to go over here, but you haven't collected enough fees to pay for it because the development over here is maybe smaller impact fees, then you might have to borrow from some other funds to to get that pipeline in, and then over the next 10 years, as the development occurs citywide, then eventually you can pay that off.
But the challenge here is
So-
if you are on the southwest corner of that zone, you're 50 feet lower elevation, you're downstream, and you're paying an impact fee for,
Sure.
for a pipeline that all it does is run water past you. I mean, it has
Yep.
no relationship to the land that you're developing.
True. True. You're right.
Any other questions, comments?
Ray, just one. I'm assuming you've done several of these types of plans for different communities and cities. One of the presentations that we had here this evening said there are no others that seem to break it down by drainage basin. Are you aware of other communities that have done that way?
And not specifically in Utah. The examples that I've seen are in other states. We were looking for an example in Utah. We spent a little bit of time on it. I don't know if Lester found anything right in Utah. Okay.
So basically everything
But-
in Utah is kind of said, here's what's needed in the community, and everybody shares in the...
Yeah, it's pretty common to do it that way in Utah. It has been done by drainage basin in other areas in the U.S., but we could still go look and see if there are any
Well,
examples.
like I said, I've seen the arguments both ways. I just wondered, I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes the one makes a little more sense. I wonder why no more communities are participating in it that way. If it really is.
This is the largest community we've ever done the stormwater one. In the other communities, we've done it in much smaller, and so it didn't make sense to split it up at all. So we never did look at it that way in the other studies that we've done. But in Washington, it was a bigger area, so we looked at it that way to see if it would just kind of see the difference between the two.
Still a public hearing. Anybody else on this subject? Thanks, Ray.
James Sullivan. I just wanted to make it a point. It's really not going to be the landowner that's going to benefit from any of this, or the developers, or the builders. It all comes back to any costs we incur get rolled on to the consumer. And, you know, yes, we as a builders group are up here, you know, opposed to fees going up, which we always are, but we're just coming out of a bad time that we all know about. And we hate to see costs go up because our only option is to pass those on, which in turn slows everything down a bit. And anytime costs go up, you know, it's going to hurt the general economy and the market. And on the other hand, we don't want user fees to be supporting new growth, but we do always want to have users take care of their share also. We don't want new development to support the first guy there just because he was the first guy there either. But
James, what's your thought about the zoning of the stormwater impact fee? Do you think that's a logical approach, or would you, when you build a lot of homes, or would you rather see maybe just a one citywide impact fee that's the same regardless of where you build within Washington?
you know, just because that's what we're used to, that's what I would rather see is a citywide fee. I don't know the legalities of that. If it is a unique situation when you think about it, with the river dividing the city in half and numerous washes, that it really is cut up into different zones rather than really any other city in the county. So you're stuck with a unique problem, but just me personally and as a developer, I'd rather look at it as no matter where I develop, here's what my fees are going to be.
If you know, our current fee per acre is $4,630. If we take all the different map zones out of the equation and just do total area, total lots, our fee per acre would be $4,214. I don't know if you speak for the Southern Utah Builders Association, but from your personal opinion, do you think the building community would support just an overall reduction in the impact fee?
Sure.
You know, $416 lower?
You bet. I would. Yeah, well, I mean that's our whole goal, is to keep everything either the same or
That's your
or
profit in the
less.
house, isn't it?
At
The
least,
$400.
yeah.
Pass that on to the first-time home buyer?
On a good job. So, yeah, I mean we always want to see fees stay as low as they can. And it seems like that's probably what it's been mentioned before. That's probably our biggest battle, is to make sure that we're not supporting user fees, because everybody's always hesitant to raise user fees, because then these guys get some serious backlash. Just like taxes, nobody wants to see it go up, but people got to pay their fair shares also.
Well, I just think the reality is whether you live north of the river or south of the river, or old developments or new developments, we all live in one geographical area, and it's Washington City. And I think from just an operational standpoint, it's a lot cleaner, it's a lot more consistent, it's a lot easier to understand by going to one citywide impact fee. So
It is.
kind of where I stand. So I'm glad to hear you.
It is, and it's. I mean, then you also have the next argument that's already been talked about too, is that $6 user fee. You know, is that the impact fees are being used in town where you have an existing problem, so the people in the fields are paying for that, but they're not getting any benefit out in the fields from the user fees in town. So.
And then let me say, I think you'll find all of us here on City Council are sympathetic to keeping building costs down. We know that we need affordable housing. We have concerns with any impact fees and impact fee increases. And when I built my first house here in Washington, I think my total fee was like $3,000 for everything. Building permit now, we're up, what do we hear, $13,000 or thereabout just to get
Without
started.
the water, yeah.
And so it's troublesome to all of us to figure out how do we keep this growth going forward, and at the same time keep the infrastructure in place, and that's kind of like the balance.
It is definitely a balancing act, and it always is a balancing act between new development paying their share, which they should, and existing users paying theirs.
Their share, yeah. So we appreciate your input.
Thank you very much.
You.
Anybody else?
Chris Salisbury, Salisbury Homes. I'd like to just take a minute just to echo some of the comments that have been shared this evening with regard to waiting and I guess putting a hold on a decision until all the information can be reviewed. It is a big change. It's a significant change. I don't envy the engineers that have to put these studies together. I don't envy your guys' position either. I realize the city spends a lot of money to have these studies done. It takes a lot of time. There's a finite amount of resources with the ground that we're dealing with, and building is going on while all these decisions are being made. But I think it is a significant decision, significant enough that it does call for some time to just sit back, look at all the details, maybe address some of the comments that Suba has brought up in the study, some of the contradictions that are in the study. We're looking at the $1,500 or so increase right off the bat. And I know some comments were mentioned just how that does impact the end consumer. That's something that we're always looking at. I know, just as a side note to the $1,500 increase that we're looking at, there's also the new energy code that's also coming down. We've estimated that's going to be another $1,000 to $2,000 per house. On top of that, in my inbox, I've got, I don't know, half a dozen price increases from subcontractors. So you start adding this up, and it does impact. I don't think I'm saying anything you guys don't already know. So I guess the point is that I think there's enough of a reason to stop, take a minute, take a step back, look at all these issues before moving forward with such a drastic change.
So, Mr. Salisbury,
Yep.
you build a lot of homes in the Washington Fields area, so
Yep.
obviously you're looking at segmentation of the study, which would take a $4,600 impact fee and take it to $6,222.
Yeah.
So that's where you're getting the $1,500.
Yeah. Yes.
Conversely, the overall study suggests a decrease citywide if we didn't apply it by segments.
Right. Yeah, we would be in favor of that.
In that case, it would necessitate further review of the study.
No, it's good.
I hear you.
Good to go.
Okay.
In that case, the contradictions are all right.
Lower is always better, right?
Well, you build a lot of homes. We appreciate you building in Washington City. You guys do a good job. So,
Thank you.
On all the buildings, we really do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
See, Chris, and you're hitting it kind of where I've had my concerns. You know, you're looking at, and I'm looking at the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. But if you go to the Green Springs West, under the proposal, there would be an increase of a decrease from the green. If you were to develop before the change, and compare a prior to the change and after the change, there would be a decrease of $4,110 on that acre in that zone. And if you'll take the kind of the worst case scenario there, which is the Washington Field zone, and if you were to develop after the change, there would be an increase of 1,592. And I just have a hard time with this zone methodology, and what I kind of see is, although the zoning probably makes the most sense basin-wise and engineering-wise, from an equity standpoint, I don't see where it makes any sense. And the reality is we're trying to build community-wide systems. Even though the ditch may occur in one zone that needs to be improved, it's really a city-wide system that we're trying to do. And I feel like the better methodology is to equalize these across all developable acreage in the city.
Yeah, I agree with you, Councilman Taylor.
Anybody else? Anything else from the council? If not, we can entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second
I have
that.
a motion and a second to close the public hearing.
Sherman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turk, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll go to item B, consideration to approve an ordinance adopting the Washington City Stormwater Capital Facilities Master Plan.
Mayor, I think that we've had some great discussion. It has been a little thought-provoking. Like I said, we put a lot of time into this, starting clear back last January, February. We started down this path and I've looked at this, and several different projects are out there. I think that some of our councilmen have very well kind of expressed my feelings on it, that it is kind of, we're in a community together here. And sometimes we give and take for the best of the community. So I would make the motion that we would approve the impact fee and capital facilities plan that averages all areas to change our new impact fee to $4,214 per acre.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Nice night.
Sherman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Can I just ask a question, Councilman Turek? Sorry, and I should have done this before the vote was called. The capital field, sorry, the stormwater master plan reaches the different conclusion, although the ordinance goes along with your motion. Do we change the master plan to reflect the ordinance, or what? How do we deal with that?
I think you might want to answer that. Do we have?
I mean,
we have a
do we
study
need to rework the
like
master
that
plan?
that can support it if they go that route? Because sort of the two options are there for council to choose from.
Yeah, the study's built almost identical to the way the 2005 study was built. We did the same thing in the 2005 study. That's the only way you can deal with drainage, is to break it down into basins. You have major basins, minor basins that fall within it. So the study follows that same footprint, and the calculation of an impact fee is really simple. It's dollars divided by acres. That's what it boils down to. The way this is broke out now on your screen there is, you know, we've looked at it on an individual basis. If you add them acres up, add up the total project costs, divide them by the acres, that's the number you come up with. So
Correct.
So can that just be adjusted to reflect? I mean, it doesn't seem like it would take much just to show that.
no, and we've also, you know, the first letter that came from Suba, they brought up some points that kind of needed some clarification scenario, and you know, not knowing which way council was going to go with this discussion tonight, we kind of held off on making them clarifications to the study, you know, pointing out the specific areas which meet the IFFP criteria, that kind of stuff. You know, we've kind of held off on doing that, but all it is a clarification within the document. The verbiage is already there. So it's, you know, I don't know if we need to hold off and do this later from a legal perspective until them changes are made.
The
I mean, to me, this makes sense, but my worry is that the capital facilities plan doesn't reflect that. Either that or I'm missing a section where it does. So I'm looking at, on pages about 45 through 50, let me tell you what section it is. Chapter 12, the capital facilities plan impact fee determination.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that it does not show that. It
Does
doesn't
not
break
show,
that.
it doesn't show this.
Right.
Yeah, that's what my question to Councilman Turek is I'm inclined to support his motion, but I want to verify that in supporting the motion, I'm not saying the capital facilities plan as I'm seeing it is also being ratified in that vote.
You do adopt it in, that's the thing. And in fact, by definition, adopts in that capital facility impact study or that impact fee study. But so, what do you see needs to be done? Maybe we're looking for Ray to say that. What do you see that can be done to adjust, or does there need to be an adjustment? Is there just something that is missing? There's a disconnect somehow? Maybe you understand the council.
It really is. It's a one-line calculation is what it boils down to. And we'd be happy to make that change. It's simple.
Can we do it subject to the amendment, adding the per lot calculation?
Well, seems to me that
I guess I'm looking at the agenda, which says consideration to approve an ordinance adopting the Washington City Stormwater Capital Facilities Master Plan. But the motion to Councilman Turek is not reflected in that master plan. And so that's my challenge here. Is I support the motion. I support the motion, but my struggle is that's not what I'm seeing in the master plan that's on the agenda for approval.
So I guess the question is, can we amend that master plan just by our vote? We have to actually have it amended and then come back.
I think at the very least, you probably have to, based on the redo the motion, to also include an amendment to that, just reflecting that.
I mean, really, all we're doing is summing the total of all the zones. I mean, the data supports it. It's just taking the average collective.
But we want that reflected in it, so it's obvious in the future.
I think that can be added into the study.
Amending that to reflect it.
Maybe if I can make a recommendation that maybe we just table this to the next meeting. Let us make this change in the document. Also, we would like to sit down and make these changes that Suba has asked us to look at. We intended to do that. We actually thought that would happen in this meeting. There'd be a motion, but would like to sit down with Suba and make those changes to make them comfortable with this document as well. And then maybe at the next meeting, bring this back.
And bring the capital facilities plan back with the average citywide.
With this average and also incorporating the changes that to clarify some of this that Suba would like to see.
Is that all generally discussed in the public meeting part, however? Like basically, right?
Yes, that was pretty much stuff that Maria brought up.
Murray mentioned it in her letter and in her statement.
I just forwarded it on to them. Is that one you sent me? Yeah, they have it now. Okay.
Well, Mayor, I don't
anticipate anything that might be adjusted that comes back for consideration for a vote would necessarily expand that public discussion necessarily.
No, I don't think it'll actually really change a lot of the meaning of the document at all. It's just a couple of clarifications how we see it. I'd like to do that as well. Sit down with Suba and go over those.
And Lester's also correct. It's a one-line calculation. The problem is that one-line calculation isn't made, and that's not what the recommendation is in the study. The study is the other calculation. So it's not like we need to rewrite the whole study, but as it's presented tonight, it doesn't reflect the motion that was made. So Mayor, I don't know where that leaves us, Mayor. With
I think that leaves us to where we need to.
But it does sound like we wouldn't have to come back and open public
No,
meeting.
no, I don't think when they go.
What you discussed and what you're contemplating improving is adopted into your ordinance, which you adopt into. So that makes the most sense, especially if staff doesn't mind if it's able.
With that being said, Mayor, I'll take my motion back off the table and make a new motion that we go ahead and table this to our next meeting to look at them.
We'll second.
Have a motion and a second.
Nice night.
Truman, aye. Seg Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
That's been tabled for 2 weeks. Thank you all, and thank you for your input and thoughts. And we'll move on. Public hearing for consideration to approve an ordinance adopting the Washington City Public Safety Capital Facility Plan Impact Fee.
Mayor,
You didn't start that, Roger?
yeah. Mayor, we are going to, as we move into this public hearing, staff will be recommending, however, to council that we continue this public hearing. And the reason for that is that the ordinance was not posted. Right. So that requires us to continue the public hearing. However, having said that, I think that we are here for public hearing. Continue to just do that posting. And I know Stephen and Destin are here to make the presentation with regards to public facility. The good news is this will give us time with SUBA as well. I know they've got some recommendations. They've got some thoughts on how we might recalculate some things, and we'll take a look at that.
Good evening. Stephen Hall. Just wanted to give kind of a brief overview again of this public safety impact fee facilities plan and analysis for you as well for the public who may not have been here last month. So just kind of an overview. They're really the latest impact fee facilities plan that we've had is the 1999 fire department plan, and that did not include police. So there's not an existing plan that includes the police department. Only one includes the fire, and that was done in '99. So there was a need for this plan. Another reason for the need was, the police station. They're in need of a new police station. They've run out of room, and that is why we have completed this plan and analysis. Just a brief overview of how it went. So the existing impact fee amounts are $200, and that would, like I say, that just includes a fire. And this plan recommends that be increased to $564, and that includes both the fire and the police. So we've recognized some improvements that need to be made in both departments. But basically, and the way that this worked is we looked at growth projections for the city. Our planning period that we're looking at is a 10-year planning period. And then from there we looked at existing level of service, and we based the level of service on square feet of facility per 1,000 people. In other words, right now there's so many square feet of fire station per 1,000 people in the city, and the same with the police. And then, so we took those numbers, and then we also calculated in the future, based on the improvements that are needed, what would be your projected level of service. And then came up with the target level of service that really, can be changed, can be set by you. But right now we're showing it. So existing level of service, 574 square feet per 1,000 people for fire department, 255 square feet per 1,000 people for the police, and the projected would be 573 for the fire and 428 for police. And we have the targets levels of service set at 508 and 350. And so from that we ran our analysis and determined basically that even though our existing impact fee is $200, but it would be increased to $564 for residential homes, and for non-residential, businesses and non-residential units, it would be essentially $0.282 per square foot of that building. So the larger businesses, the larger non-residential facilities that would require more from fire or police would be charged at that rate. So Any questions from you guys on the analysis and the plan?
We're going to charge this based on who lives in the more fire and crime-ridden areas, right? We're gonna, I'm just teasing. This one.
Yeah.
That would be bad for me because I live in a.
Live in a great part of town.
I'm teasing.
No questions?
Sorry, Mayor. I do have one question, and it's partly because of my service on the committee that's considering a shared fire station out in the Coral Canyon area. The decision hasn't been made, but there's been enough discussions that I think it's probably not right to assume a full fire station and a full apparatus constructed by Washington City in the Coral Canyon Highland area. It seems like where we're going to end up is on a shared station with Hurricane, where we'll participate in the cost of the building and the cost of land and even sharing some apparatus. How do we take that into account in this study?
If you did that, it would pretty much, so that in our impact fee analysis, there's a numerator and a denominator, right? This is a little more complex than the stormwater was, but essentially there's the fees, or the cost for the facility, new facilities, and there's how many new houses or residences or non-residential. And it's all of that is based on the level of service. So if you were to decrease the amount of fees, or not fees, improvements that you were doing, you would have less on the numerator there. However, because, how do I put this? So you can't charge more than your existing level of service. And so even if you were taking off impact fee eligible improvements, you'd be taking off the level of service as well. And so it may not have too much of an effect just because...
It's possible by doing a shared facility, we actually have, we end up with an increased level of service.
Yeah, you would maintain that level of service.
Even compared to a new facility.
Correct.
Even though it's serving more
Yeah,
people.
we may even be able to benefit from an apparatus that we wouldn't even be able to purchase under the current plan. And so my concern would be that the plan as I've read it and reviewed it anticipates the city constructing their own fire station out in that area. But over the last few months, the discussion and I think the direction that we're going to end up is going to be in a shared facility that's probably going to be larger and with higher rated apparatus than we would build on our own because of the nature of the sharing and the nature of the other cities out there. And so I guess my question is not so much what fee will that get us, but it's how do we have the analysis in this report anticipate the likelihood of those discussions?
I think it would take some assumptions, but it could be.
Okay.
You could put it in there.
Probably fairly minimal when you're talking $564. You're probably talking, which is, I mean, it all adds up.
Yeah. So, all just ends up at the ratepayer, right?
Yeah, the one concern I'd have with apparatus, I always like to control my own destiny, so I'm a little bit hesitant to say that I'm going to allow somebody else to own the apparatus out there and let me borrow it once in a while if I need it.
Yeah, and
the apparatus, I would just assume fund and say we're going to control our own destiny apparatus-wise.
And I might be premature because I know there's no agreements in place, but I know the council's also been a part of some of those discussions, and I would say that it's far more likely that we do that than we build our own facility.
Maybe I'm thinking too theoretical about it, but if you're talking about the level of service based on population, and if all of a sudden you then go jointly with Hurricane, you've got a larger population to service, you may have to have a bigger facility than what we would build on our own, and maybe those costs offset each other, and you're back in the same position.
Yeah, I'm not sure really. I don't know where we're going to be, but the plan as I read it makes an assumption that we're building our own, and I think we would all up here acknowledge that there's a pretty good likelihood that assumption is incorrect.
Okay.
And so I don't know how to do that math, but I know you guys do.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it would have too much of an impact. Kind of like what you were saying. I mean, as far as level of service goes, you're building a larger
Service area.
and your service area is larger. Maybe your level of service is per population.
So your figures change and probably end up a wash.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. And it's open to the public. That's why it's called a public hearing. You're welcome to come on up. We're just postponing the.
We're going to
Yeah, I just
continue
thought, from our perspective, people are here for the public hearing.
Okay.
And I know that there's probably comments that Sue wants to make
Okay.
with respect to that.
I hope you're not tired of us.
No.
Okay, regarding public safety, we do realize that this is a fee that will be increasing to $560. Through our analysis, we did notice in the public safety impact fee analysis, fire apparatuses were included in that. And per the impact fee statute, no fire apparatuses can be charged to residential growth. So there was not the 500,000. I guess 500,000 was noted in that, but it was not deducted in the overall analysis. And I do have the Utah code if you need that. And then
What's the code section, Mari?
it's UCA 10-36A-202 2AI. Okay. And then I know our consultant had mentioned about how the level of service was determined. And let me just read it. It says, as explained more fully, the level of service, existing, projected, or target, should be based upon an ERU, existing residential unit number, not on population, because the population does not accurately account for all the ERUs in the system, which have already contributed to the public safety needs. And so we feel that these two items are also areas that need to be addressed. And again, SUBA, we want to be a resource. You know, we want to include recommendations. So I think by working together, the city and SUBA, we're going to have a really thorough and positive study. So those are just our two comments on that. Okay?
I guess since we're not going to be voting tonight, we encourage you to, if you have not already done so, sit down with the city and go through those
Sure.
in more detail.
Absolutely. Yep. And thank you again for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your ideas and support.
Sure.
Anybody else? Guess we can make a motion to close the public hearing.
Well, I
without
don't
voting.
think, I think, Mayor, I think we're going to make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Because one,
Yeah.
they want to be able to see the order, make sure they can see it by
So
statute.
continuing it till our next regular meeting is enough time to get the posting issue resolved and also some of these other issues?
Yes, 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the one issue we've kind of acknowledged. The other one is kind of more of a philosophical discussion on how we use an equitable allocation calculator. So the good news is we'll have some time to maybe work with their group a little bit, see if we can come to terms on that. Because we don't see that necessarily being a death knell. We think it meets the intent, but we think that in discussion with them, we might be able to find that ground we need to on the equitable allocation level of service.
So Tara, our next meeting is August 27th. Okay, Mayor, I'll make the motion that we continue the public hearing for consideration to approve the Washington City Public Safety Capital Facility Plan impact fee until August 27th, our next regular City Council meeting.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
Nice and I.
Truman, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We'll move that till 27th. Move on to item E. Public hearing for consideration to approve a general plat amendment G-1402 to change from NCOM neighborhood commercial to LD low density residential located at approximately 600 East, 2100 South. Applicant Judd Palmer.
Mayor, if I may, I apologize. Your version of this didn't show too much, and so we'll put this one up for everybody's benefit on this, for this proposal. As stated, this is a request for a general plan land use amendment. The area is located approximately at the 600 East, 2100 South. Just to bring this back to your memory, this is where the funeral home was going to go. Not too long ago, probably about a year ago, I think it's probably been, we had this changed from the low density to neighborhood commercial, and then following that we did a zone change to administrative professional, and this is where the funeral home was going to go.
So what happened to that? I know they were all on board, ready to finance it forward.
Personal issues changed the dynamic of the business. I'll just keep it, I think that's the best way to say it. For the owners at that time, or the developers. So things have changed. They're no longer going to be there. Mr. Staley owns it, and also Mr. Palmer are now coming back in to change this back. The proposal is to go back to the low density residential designation, and what they'll do is continue on the development to the R112 zone after, if this is passed. We'll come back for a zone change, and they'll plan on extending that road that's currently there that dies, and extending 4 or 5 more lots with a cul-de-sac, and continue homes up on that upper shelf of the project. Most of us know exactly where it's at. And, so that is the proposal before you tonight.
So we're just talking the blue
just
hash.
the blue area.
Yep.
Just this area right there. The others just shown as kind of reference only. What the yellow is the existing, the pink is what we've looked at as possible commercial down the road, and it's just this particular blue area, which will have the legal description associated with it. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their July 16th meeting of this year, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of G-14-02 to amend the general plan land use map as outlined above to the bringing it back to the low-density residential designation in the general plan.
I'm smiling because for once I feel vindicated, so I thought it should have been from the start.
Karma is a great thing. You can believe in it from time to time.
I was going to ask if we could have them put a sign up like it's been done in Green Springs on the lower piece that says future site of neighborhood commercial. So they know when they build a house there what's coming below.
What's coming below. Exactly. I thought many people would be excited that this is going back to where it was. So with that said,
There's 1 or 2 neighbors that were pretty fired up about this. We need to go visit with them.
well, everybody got notice, so I'm sure the word went around.
We need to go plead their forgiveness, I think.
Yeah. So.
Any questions? Comment?
How much land is that again?
How many what?
How much land is it?
The acreage is 1.77 acres. I know it looks much bigger on that diagram, but it's roughly almost 2 acres up there.
Mayor, if there's no public comment, I'll make the motion that we.
We haven't opened it up yet.
Okay.
Councilman.
I'm closing something that's not even open.
This is a public hearing, and we welcome public comment.
Home celebrating in the neighborhood.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing.
All right, there's a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second.
Dyson, aye.
Truman, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Thank you. Consideration to approve an ordinance adopting the general plan amendment request G-1402 to change the land use designation from NCOM to LD.
I'd like to make that motion, if I may. I make a motion that we approve an ordinance adopting general plan amendment request G-14-02, change the land use designation from neighborhood commercial to low density.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Dyson, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is approved. Item 6, PCD Plan Development Agreement. Consideration to approve a PCD Plan and Development Agreement for the Brio del Sol Plan Community Development. Applicant Henry Walker Homes.
Okay. Well, this will come up. This is the item we discussed last night. I guess basically the staff has reviewed the plan book that you've had a copy of. We've also reviewed the development agreement. I'm not sure what's happening to my.
It's just really big. Yeah.
That's true.
It's this. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll let it keep going. I'll just kind of.
What version are we still looking at? Council, what version did you
He's
have?
looking at the Henry Walker Homes version.
The April 28th. Yeah. April 28th.
Okay, I think it's the one that was most recently downloaded that came directly from them with certain things. Basically, we went through the development agreement a bit last night, talked about the plan, showed several maps. I guess the biggest issue we have before us tonight is, of course, the design on the streets. The request by the developer is to have single-loaded sidewalks on one side of the street or the other at their choice versus the standard 2 sidewalks, but they will still leave the road width will still be the standard minimum of 50 foot. It's just on the opposite side will be landscaping up to the back of the curb, continuation basically of the front yard to that point.
Did I understand correctly, there was that one interior road with no sidewalks? Is there that one?
There would be the one that's in the townhome project, which all the neighbors are right next to each other. Basically, it'll be like row housing, as I like to refer to it from my days in England. Just continuous homes side by side, a townhome project up in that one section. You know what? We're going to just go to. My map should come up quicker, I hope. And the particular, well, I'll just kind of zoom in on it. It's this area that's labeled the F. Right there would be the street. I guess it's just Steve's liking to blink black and go back. But that would be the road that they're asking that no sidewalks beyond that. But and I think they work out a design with Public Works, did they not, for it to be a public road still or not? I guess we'll.
Yeah, now you broke.
Squirrels are coming. Stop that, Tara.
What their proposal was, they were actually proposing to bring the homes up closer to the roadway, and they were proposing to do sidewalk access at the back of the homes. That's what their proposal was. So, kind of more of a community type approach to it, to have the pedestrian access at the back of the home, the car access at the front of the home. We kind of tossed this around back and forth numerous times. They acted as if, they'd be okay with the private street scenario on that one particular road as well.
So to be clear, Lester, the private street allows them to produce a little less infrastructure than the public street would. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so, is it a question of sidewalks, or is it a question of whether we allow them to do a private street?
I think it's some of both is what it boils down to, because you do have the pedestrian access issue. I mean, they've basically got to say the pedestrians are going to be in the back. They're not going to be on the roadway side.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing that. Maybe that needs to put a little, like Venetian, a little waterway down there and skip the roadway and boat access.
Oh, there you go.
And honestly, I'm actually more comfortable if that were a private street by itself. But that would be the only private street that they're proposing in the development too. So.
Why does that make you more comfortable?
When we get the calls on it, They can go talk to their homeowners association. That's what they chose to do.
Like I say, you're gonna get the calls anyway.
We're gonna get the calls one way or another.
You'd be
without
more comfortable
sidewalks.
with it if they accept that cross-section of the road without the sidewalks.
But if we went to public streets and brought the sidewalks to the front, what would you anticipate calls wise?
If there's sidewalk on both sides of the street, that's what we're finding that the residents want. And that comes
So is there a
from,
problem
you know,
with
we've
that
got,
street width if we double load that through the sidewalk? Have we got a-
yes,
got a
they
street
don't,
width problem?
they don't have enough width called out in their 36-foot cross section. They've only got an additional 2.5 feet behind each side of the curb. There's not enough width to put sidewalk on both sides of the street because you need a minimum of 4 feet. So there would be an additional 6 feet of right-of-way width needed. They'd need to go to a 42-foot section to get it to work, which in turn drives the homes back farther.
Is there rooms on the lot to
That's
accommodate
something,
that?
that's something you'll have to touch base with them on.
So what citizens are telling you they want 2 sidewalks? We're here in a zone where
Yeah,
sidewalks are a rarity.
Yeah, we get a lot of complaints and concerns coming from, for example, Fairway Drive and Green Springs Drive both. As you get up into the upper ends of them developments, there's only sidewalk on one side of the road. So
My observation, I think I've been in a few of those communities, you pull in, they are usually 55 and older, but somebody younger brings their kids in to visit somebody there, go for a walk, you haven't got a sidewalk, you're crossing the road, you have cars parked in the street, I mean, like safety hazard. But I'm not looking at it probably from a myopic point of view with my few visits, but
and that's, you know, what they're proposing with the townhomes and as tight as they are, I mean, it basically closes the door on that. It's more of a, you know, almost an alley type scenario where they're entering the home from the back with their vehicles and all of the activities, you know, any of that stuff is going on the opposite side in the courtyard scenario.
So the alley would be the F way, or would
Yeah,
it be
it's
the
not,
E way?
yeah, it's not an alley. It's a 36-foot wide roadway, so it does accommodate fire apparatus. It does meet our.
That would be the one sidewalk road, right? And so
No, that's is no sidewalk road.
No sidewalks
on the F1. The rest of the roads in the community are proposed with sidewalk on only one side.
Okay.
they're proposing a sidewalk on the back of these row houses so they can go from neighbor to neighbor. What about the side of the home? Yep. So they're not going to be homes on both sides of F.
That's what they're proposing.
So on this side of F, there will need to be a sidewalk on the back side. I thought we just heard they're going to park in the front and in the back that have sidewalks and people visit their neighbors.
That's what they discussed with us, was a courtyard scenario with sidewalks in between. You got the green block there and the gray above it. Yeah. They were proposing sidewalks in there, in that backside, between the units.
It's easier to steal some barbecue.
And the discussions that I've had with them, you know, this has been something that's been back and forth numerous times, and you know, we really couldn't come to a consensus. And you know, kind of what it boiled down to is, you know, with a private street scenario, we've got a little bit more latitude, but we're still looking for pedestrian access on it.
Council Starkey, does the agenda item of just approving the development agreement, does that require that all of this concept map be approved as part of that also?
Yeah, in fact,
or does that come in the phasing?
That's more, in fact, this particular one is one of those items that has an exhibit. This locks in this particular issue. That's why that's so important. Section. Oh yeah, you'll change it the way you want it. It'll have to be adapted to whatever you say. That was anticipated. There was going to be a discussion with council, one way or the other, what you were going to preferred fee adopted into the agreement. But that's a really important point, just locking it in.
And we do have one, in our current design standards, we do have one cross-section that accommodates this 36-foot right-of-way width. But it was to be used on a very limited type basis, and it's on a single loaded roadway scenario where, you know, for example, on a hillside road, you see quite a bit of it up in Northbridge area. You get into these steeper hillsides, you can only really put houses on one side of the road. The other side is typically retaining walls or a sheer cliff, and there's no home frontage on it. That's the provision that we put into our design standards for a 36-foot right-of-way with a single loaded sidewalk. That was the intent behind it.
This one's obviously double loaded.
Exactly. Well, most of the subdivision is double loaded.
So with that, everybody's seen the cross section of that. So that's unless there's other questions about, staff is recommending that, and so did the Planning Commission recommended approval of the project plan. They don't look at development agreements, but they did recommend in their meeting in July to approve the project plan that you see, knowing that the cross section on those residential streets would still come before you. And I've made note to them that that would be a decision the council would have to entertain. And with that, staff is also recommending that the development agreement be approved, but again, based upon your decision on the street design, I think is what's before us tonight, unless you had questions about.
So did the Planning Commission make any recommendation about the sidewalk issue, or is that even their role?
I don't think that they did, if I remember at the minutes. They did. They were happy to say.
Well, that's a first. They're usually
comes with change.
Thank you, Councilman Turek. I'm going to bring. Let me just back out of this, if I may, because I'm going to actually go to their preliminary plat proposal, because it's on there, and we'll use it as the reference because it's the same that's in the book, but I can get to it really fast. Denise, you might want to try the TV again. It may have been. Well, that's fine. This is. Is that off? So we'll just see what happens. I'm cross my fingers that we're not going to get the knock on wood. But this is the cross section that they're asking for on the standard residential street. As you can see, with the pedestrian walking down on that left-hand side there, but on the right hand would just be landscaping. But again, it's still a 50-foot residential street that the city, would have as the right-of-way, and this is the proposal that the developer is asking for. Other than everything else, this was the thing that between staff and the developer that we felt just has to be answered by the city council.
And my thoughts on this is it's a PCD by nature. It's custom zoning. This is a sophisticated developer. They've done these kind of things before. I tend to think that they know what they're doing on something like this. The people that are going to come in and buy, they'll be able to see the maps. They'll see the master plan. I don't think it'll be a surprise to them. Personally, I'm comfortable with it, with a single sidewalk and a private street in the area where there's no sidewalk. So.
Staff make a recommendation one way or the other on their preference.
Well, I think
staff as a whole is kind of recommended not. We take that. So.
More than anything, falls outside our standard design cross sections, and that's why probably more than anything we feel it's a council, especially in a PCD.
And that's the only. If it wasn't a PCD, we'd probably even come a little bit stronger. But because it is a PCD, we wanted to leave that. And as Councilman Staley said, PCDs are agreements between developers and the city because of the vastness of the area being developed. There's cities take that leeway in PUDs and PCDs to work those things out and have things that are a little bit different than they might be in other parts of the city too. So that's why the developer's asking for that.
Yeah, the development as a whole is really quite amazing. I mean, community center, parks, pools, tennis courts, clinic, assisted living. I mean, it's really pretty amazing.
We're just missing the Walgreens and the hairdresser, though.
Yeah.
And the cemetery and
Yeah,
the
I was
funeral
gonna say, we
home.
expanded a little further last night.
We did. We had some fun last night.
Yeah, I take a little bit different position than Councilman Staley because I feel that it becomes somewhat of a safety issue, especially with these older communities. People are active, they're out walking, they're out, and basically what we're doing is putting one side into the street, but the other side has a sidewalk. To me, it's just much safer, especially the area is already there. We're just saying you're going to put cement instead of grass or whatever. I mean, so it isn't like we're infrastructurally changing anything per se. And so to me, it's just much cleaner. It's a much safer neighborhood. So I'm inclined to go the other direction with it.
Any other questions, comments? Are we ready for a vote?
I guess I wouldn't mind asking the applicant, if I may. You know, we talked about this quite extensively yesterday, and you said there's a number of communities, the 55 and older, even though it's really only 80% 55 and older communities that have gone this way with the single-loaded sidewalks. And I think you've referenced Sun River being one of those here, right?
Correct.
As far as studies that you've done, have you seen a negative impact with the double-loaded sidewalk? I'm just trying to figure out what's the resistance to going sidewalks on both sides, and
Right.
what impact your development negatively.
Right. No, the biggest thing is not so much a negative, and I don't know that we could really pinpoint a negative, other than as we went through the study of going to quite a few different developments, not only here, obviously, but all throughout the West. We spent quite a bit of time just over a year ago as we first started this project, before we really got into the to the meat of getting into the PCD application. And as we did that research and found that a lot of the larger successful active adult communities throughout the West, that we just tried to glean as much information as we could of what worked and what didn't, and speaking with them. This just happened to be one of the small things that it wasn't really a deal killer one way or the other. You know, it wasn't like, oh yeah, people loved having two sidewalks, or oh yeah, they loved having just the one. It was just so much that became a more of a standard item, because number one, again, we talked about this a little bit last night, is it really breaks the feel up of the cross section of that street. It gives it a much softer feeling of having concrete, curb gutter, asphalt, concrete again. And it's amazing how, again, if you go look at a place like Sun River, and they have both, because they started with sidewalk on both sides in their original development, and then gradually, as they've marched through the development, they went to the single loaded. And when you go through and look at it, and it does make a bit of a difference, not having as much paved cross-sectional area. Again, you don't have a big end user group here, that a lot of children that are coming, and they're going to be there a lot. Most people will either just walk in the street because there's very little traffic to begin with, and they're going to usually, again, head for the trail system. We have a very extensive trail system throughout the community. Again, we just found the sidewalks just don't get used that much. So,
is it a significant cost? I was concerned about the impact of a cost of putting cement in versus landscaping.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little difference in cost. I mean, you may look at landscaping at $2 a square foot, and concrete sidewalk at $6 or $7 a square foot. So there is a little difference in cost there.
You don't have to water the sidewalk, at least intentionally.
You don't have to water the sidewalk, but you can also have it get jacked up with tree roots and other. I mean, there's pros and cons of both. So again, really, it wasn't so much that we looked at cost or just aesthetics or just usability. We just kind of looked as a whole of what made most sense for this type of community, and really what a lot of the standards were that we found in this type of community. And as we went to a few different conferences as well, the biggest emphasis again was the trail systems, not what your street cross sections were, not how people got in and out of their house or where they went to first, or even little nuances like that. But it was more that having that trail network, and we find that in our community here in Washington County in general, that what's one of the big things that people, really tout about where we live is, hey, we've got a great trail system, and people love to have that trail system, not that, oh yeah, there's a cool sidewalk over here and I like to use. I mean, and not to downplay the sidewalk at all, but the trail system becomes really the big emphasis on your pedestrian circulation. So to us, we'd rather spend that extra couple bucks a square foot to put as much into the trail system as we can throughout, because again, for example, on our main loop roads, we don't have to put a trail in there. We could just put a standard 4 or 5 foot sidewalk on those main loop roads. That meets the minimum city requirement, and that would be great. But that trail system, once you start putting in that 10-foot wide trail with a larger landscape buffer and so on and so forth, and then show how that interconnects all throughout your development, that immediately becomes a big selling point and a thing that people then go and use a lot. Plus, it gives us the opportunity to have the connectivity back into the regional trail system that the city, has, that will come in and abut to the project itself.
Well, to be fair, you've got a great plan here, and I'm trying to put my few negative experiences with developments without a sidewalk on both sides and trying to put that aside.
Sure.
Rely on your experience to say, we think these people in this age category will like this, and obviously you need to sell it. So.
Right. Yeah, and again, like I said, this, and we don't want to make a bigger issue out of this than it is. It's not a deal killer to us, but it's just something, again, as we did our market research on all these things, all the way down to things like the community center, where we put quite a bit more into that community center than a typical project of this size would have. That community center is becoming a very, very large emphasis and focus of the community, and then again, spurring out from there things like the trail system and so on and so forth. So it's just one more of those added benefits, if you will, that just little details, if you will, that make a difference in the overall picture of the community. So,
Lester, how do we do on calls about sidewalks in the Crow Canyon area? We doing okay over there? We get much complaint? There's a pretty good sized neighborhood that's got them on where it's not.
Are you talking in the first phase up where the alleyways were?
I'm talking the phase that's close to commercial there.
Yeah. That's up in the alleys, and most of them, if I'm not mistaken, are once in a while residents. I don't think they're, for the most part, they live there full time.
They're 55 and older, so maybe a retirement home or something.
They could be. A lot of them are, they come down for a visit. They're smaller units, and they're just there for a weekend here and there, or a week here and there along the way. That's my understanding of the area. Yeah.
Well, that's part of that discussion with the townhomes. That's a very small portion of our project. We're only looking at like 80 units in there, and we actually looked at that as the townhome portion may actually be that kind of person who's on the fringe of retiring. They may be in the 45-50 range. It may come down here just only periodically. They're probably not going to even be there that much, and then eventually they may come in, see how they even like the community, the area. They may then from there move up from a townhome into one of the typical single-family detached units. So that townhome area, A, it's very small in comparison. B, we don't anticipate that being a typical primary resident who will live there in the townhome portion. So, and again, that's not the townhome portion is not by any means our major emphasis on the project. That just gives one little small, pod of another option for a potential buyer who again may come down in that late, mid to late 50s and be looking to move up as they eventually retire full time. So.
Thanks, I appreciate answering those
Yeah.
questions.
You bet. Any other questions from the council?
I guess not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike or Lester, how, so looking at this, how we have this set up for Drew, because I'm not sure if council in their packet, because with drafted right now, we have that, this particular issue, this cross-section. Because, I mean, whatever we approve, got to get locked, that's got to be locked in one way or the other. We have it set up as being actually attached to the agreement as Exhibit E, as an Exhibit E, versus it being adopted into the project plan itself. I just want to make sure whatever we do is going to be consistent. I'm not sure council actually has that exhibit E, shows that cross section, do you? I didn't have it on my packet. So I just want to make sure whatever we agree to, consistent, we know where it's going to be, because that's going to lock it in.
Well, just to help you, I'd rather it be attached to the book, the project plan, because that's where the designs of the streets, I think, and I'm trying to find those. They do have those proposed. And regardless, I'm trying to, yeah, but I'm 42, okay.
And we'll just need to adjust this one.
It will be, and it's basically on page 43, and it's figure 3.10, which is labeled the 50-foot residential street. Because I think we're fine with the other ones being, because they have the big trails in them that are just single loaded on the one side, having the 10-foot trails on the big looping road. So basically the one we're talking about is if Lesser's acceptance of the 36-foot one they show in here, is that right? You're okay with that one? On the same page?
That's the one that's not showing any sidewalks, and that's the one where I'm still not covered.
Well, you want that to be a private street, if anything.
If it's a private street, yeah.
Yes, we're basically looking at those two on page 43. Have you found that in your...
Whatever council agrees to is going to have to be reflected in the project plan. Then I'll go back and adjust
On the development
paragraph
agreement.
to reflect that's where it's going to be found.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, it's what they would propose.
Yeah, so we're looking at figure 3.10 and 3.11 on what the council's decision will be.
Any other questions or comments for discussion? Anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and move that we approve the PCD plan and development agreement for the Brio del Sol planned community development for the recommendations based on the recommendations and subject to the conditions.
And as per the road, as stated in the
looked
book.
like it was one of the conditions as I read through. I'm pretty sure that condition. Let me find it here. It's condition 11. Street cross sections will have to be approved by the city council through adoption of the project plan guidebook and development agreement. And
I think that's actually part of the one of our next items. I think that's the phase 1 of the Brio that you might have pulled up on the conditions.
So. Maybe so.
Yeah, that's for the preliminary plat,
okay.
Which I left it at that because we needed to get this approved first. So,
based on the street cross section on page 43 of the project plan, figures 3.10, 3.11. And I'd also add that that final townhome phase would be a private road.
So I'd probably recommend, because I think, let me just make sure, Ben, now the 311 is just in the townhome project anyway, correct? So we'll just call, if we can just call that residential private street on 311, if you want to make that, to amend the motion to make it easier, we can just have that printed. Accept it as a residential private street.
Okay, add that as a condition. Or just part of the motion.
Okay.
Do I need to restart this motion?
I don't know. I think we're good because you're accepting the project as presented, and you're just adding.
I don't know if we're overcomplicating this, but to me, I didn't see anything that wasn't already in the book that I read, marked, and.
We're just making 311, making sure it's designated as a private street.
I think Kara, it may be restated just so Kara gets it.
No, 311, it will be a private street. It will be. That's the only one.
It must be.
Yeah, take his 3.10 out of the equation, because he's proposing it to stay as it is in the book. His
And
only,
the only reason I brought up 3.10 is because we have the discussion of double loaded versus single loaded sidewalks.
you just want to accept it, yeah.
I'm fine with that. I'll propose that if the council agrees that the majority of those streets are acceptable as single loaded based on that 3.1 figure, and then the one street that's in the proposal with no sidewalks, that's 3.11, that's a private street.
I think that's good.
Councilman Truman, I've looked at Sun River and Coral Canyon that both have single loaded, and I think I'm comfortable with the proposal, so I'll second your motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Nice and I.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, nay.
Okay, that passes 4-1. Item 7, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Brio del Sol, Phase 1, located at 300 West, 600 North.
I'll bring that up. Leave it here and try to work through it.
Hey, Ben, so I'll shoot to you and Matt. Changes will be in this local road on the development agreement, just so we make sure we reflect, take that activity out, reflect that it's just figure 3.11. And that shall also be private streets. We'll put that right into the development agreement because it's not an activity. So I'll just change it. No.
I'd rather have it reflected in.
2 point. If we have it in development agreement, it'll be really clear. But right now, it's the activity. I'll change that. I'll send it to you and Matt, so that it reflects what Council Staley just did. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The applicant is requesting the approval of a preliminary plat for the Brio del Sol Phase 1 subdivision. The applicant's wishing to develop 106 lots on an area that covers 81.90 acres. These lots will consist of 104 residential lots and a large lot for the proposed community center, and then the commercial lot for a residential treatment facility as approved in the PCD plan, and as we referred to last night, that residential treatment center will come at a later date when so warranted, I guess, by demand. The particular phase of the project, as stated, is the 104 residential lots, a large community center pad, and several open space areas. The surrounding zoning is open space to the north and west, single-family residential, 6,000 square foot minimum, or the R16, along with open space and multi-family residential, which is the R3, to the east, service commercial, which is C2, and multiple family residential, R3, along with planned unit development. It's a busy area in here. It's a lot of this takes in the Mill Creek Springs area, also the La Avenida apartments, etc., and then our property to the south. And so that's why all those different zoning districts are in there. It's quite confusing, but if you look at a map with colors, it makes it a lot easier. The request meets most of the zoning requirements, and I'll get to that word most because we did at this time, we're talking about the street issue. That's what the most basically relates to, is till the decision was made on the single load versus double load. Other than that, it now does meet everything that the council and the ordinances that are in place. Staff reviewed the request and recommends that the proposed subdivision be recommended for approval. And again, I won't read the other because we just took care of all that as you've read in my report, talking about the cross sections. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their July 16th meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Brio del Sol Phase 1 subdivision to the City Council. Of course, that's based on the findings subject to the conditions. And again, we will make reference that condition number, as stated by Councilman Staley, 11 is now in place. So the design on the plan does meet what the City Council just approved in that development agreement and project plan. So I think that answers all those issues now that that's been resolved, and I'll be more than glad to answer any questions the council might have on this preliminary plat.
Drew, do we need to know that there's been a name change and this preliminary plat has the prior name on there?
We probably want to make reference that it's going to be Jack Fisher. If it does show developer as Henry Walker, that we get that just amended on that, because at the time when this was proposed to us months ago, they were still in the transition time. So that's I thank you for catching that. We'll let that be adjusted to that. I think I got it at least on my application right, the applicant name change, etc. So we'll make sure the plat references that. And
yeah, it just looks like the plat, and I can understand why they wouldn't do it all with a new name, but this one's got Henry Walker on it as the applicant.
And we'll have them bring subsequent ones and replace them out.
Any questions on this one?
I'm going to take another stab here. See if I can butcher it this time.
This will be an easy one.
All right, I'll move that we approve the plat amendment for the Arroyo. I'll move that we approve a preliminary plat for Brillo del Sol Phase 1, located 300 West, 600 North, with the noted that any documents list Jack Fisher Homes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Saley, aye.
Nice and aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's approved. Item 8, plat amendment. Consideration to approve a plat amendment for the Arroyo at Sienna Hills, located 1900 East, 600 North, applicant Brennan Holdings.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a tough name to say, and you nailed it right off from the first shot. This is, as stated, requesting for approval of amended preliminary plat. To keep it brief for the council, what happened, this plat was approved originally, I'm trying to remember how long ago. I think it's been about 6-7 months, maybe by this point. It was earlier in the year, maybe even as late as April. But as the developer went out and started doing some soils testing, ran into some pockets of some pretty bad clay. As they did a little research, they found if they pushed the road a little bit, and I think it was to the west, that they could stay out of that, and found that there was better soils that way. But in the process of doing so, they ended up having to lose some lots with the bend in the road, etc., and to keep them viable and buildable and sellable, realized they had to eliminate, and that total loss of lots was 8. So the number went from 185 down to 177 lots that are being proposed on this amended preliminary plat. The area of coverage is still the 58.45 acres. And that's basically the bottom line on that, not to get too much into it, but that's why we're back, just asking for this preliminary plat amendment so they can move forward.
So this might be the obvious. So they're pushing the clay-ridden areas
into open space,
out of the buildables
right
envelope and into the open space.
Into the open space.
Mayor, if there's no discussion or questions, I know we spent a long time talking about this last time. I would just make the motion that we approve the plat amendment for the Arroyo at Sienna Hills, located at 1900 East and 600 North.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Nice and aye.
Staley, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, that's approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 9, new business. Consideration to approve an event rental at the Covington home, located at 181 East, 200 North. I think we had determined yesterday at our workshop to put it on hold and to...
Well, I think we wanted to kind of move forward and go through a zone change process with that, which would allow the neighborhoods to come in and have some comment and take that from them. So I wouldn't say that we're not going forward,
Right.
but obviously starting the process, and that being the process to begin the zone change on that.
And based upon that direction, Drew and I have talked this morning. He'll begin that application process. More than likely, it'll be request to change to an AP zone with a conditional use. And the reason the conditional use, we just don't know quite how to get our mind around parking issue. Plus, the second thing I think we've confirmed at this point is probably, and we know this is on hold, but it doesn't look like interior adjustments need to occur with regard to the ADA and restroom facility, but a ramp would. So
A ramp?
Up to the porch.
Okay, so ramp up to the porch, not at the curb or those places, it's at the...
Just an ADA.
We don't have to make any structural changes.
So we'd have to ramp
Why does-
into one of the doors, and basically either the
Why does the porch need a ramp if the
Restrooms.
proposal is...
It just needs to be ramped to whatever level the restroom is going to be. That's on the ground level.
The biggest reason is you're dealing with historic buildings versus standard. So there, if you had to go in and make structural things for the bathroom, widening of doors in there, which we really can't do, with all those other, possibilities because you're changing the integrity of the historic building, then you don't have to meet those within. But it's still, the ADA is kind of strange in this case, but they do require that you allow them to get up to, and if they want to try to get their own way inside, then it's up to them to have help, etc. To the door they can't get through with a wheelchair, but they can get to the door to have help from
Did
somebody
we
to
not
get
also
them.
talk about an outside
There will
restroom?
there will have to be, yeah, and that's why, with the exception of having an outside restroom, is why also the relief is off of the interior ones because there is a facility
I
on
don't want
site.
to convolute that because that is
Yeah.
not something we're moving forward on as was the direction of the council. I just wanted to indicate that that was one piece of information we didn't have yesterday is what we would have to do on the inside. But yes, you're correct, Councilman. We were looking at, our recommendation would be that we put an outside facility in. Now, the only question we have is just the setback issue on the outside facility. That side.
Well, let me, if you got a second, let me open my book and I'll.
The question of building a bathroom in an outdoor bathroom in a residential area.
especially got houses.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
Are
don't
you
think
saying
that's-
that you still have to get the ramp either way, if you put the outside facility,
That would
replace
have-
the need to get a ramp up to the front?
Yes, and that would have to be fully handicap accessible, because that's new, and it's not a part of the building. So that would have to be.
So that would have to have the automatic doors and ramps and...
Yeah, and we just do it on the ground level with widen up the doors, just in a sense, we do something minimal with respect to that almost reality. Well, I don't know, I was gonna say it might be just as cheap, but I can't answer that.
Okay.
Well, the bathroom wouldn't be able to be over on the street side according to the setbacks. We'd have to put it on the interior side. We could get within 3 feet of a side and a rear, but it can't be on the corner.
Because it's got, what, 10?
Well,
20?
it's got to have 30 in an AP zone, a setback of any, even a detached building, so we'd have to put it in the back corner.
Put it back where they want to have the reception then.
Well, the problem is, you'll have to tear up the.
Yeah, to get your super out.
Let's do it in the river.
Neighbors are like that, yeah. Should have just left the pool there.
Porta potty? I don't know.
Okay, so we're moving forward on
We
that.
are moving forward
Okay.
and
I'll be
we'll
starting
introduce that application.
Yep, and I've got to advertise, and we'll get that going in the paper as soon as
Okay, thank
the
you.
next time we can.
All right, we'll move on to reports. Any reports from your assigned committees? Okay.
Mayor, well, I will report.
Why don't you update us on that meeting you had with the Unified Fire Department?
Yeah, well, I've had 3 different meetings. One's the Unified Fire, one's with the Waste District, and one's with the Flood Control Authority. I'm going to start with the Waste District. The proposal's being considered quite heavily for the district board to make a vote and recommendation about street side recycling as to whether we would want a mandatory program and opt-in, which is basically it's available if you want it, which I think is kind of what exists right now. And then the middle range is what they call the opt-out, which is it's mandatory unless you opt out, and they'll give you like, a 2-day period when everybody's on vacation opt out. No, it's not that, but basically you have a period to opt out, and if you don't, then you're in. A lot of the discussion is going around things such as, so I was asking the question, let's assume we do a mandatory and everybody does it. What's the proportion of residential waste load going into the landfill, and what does that do as far as landfill efficiency? How many years does that give us on the life of the landfill? And I was a little disappointed that the years were not substantially increased, even if we assume everybody's recycling. The reality is a very large percentage of what goes in there is not even residential waste anyway. And so one of the other details is if it's an everybody's required to do it, the monthly fee will be much lower because the recycling company will, of course, have many more pickups as it goes up and down the street. Whereas if it were an opt-in or an opt-out where they don't have 100% of participants, the monthly fee, of course, goes up because they're lifting fewer buckets as they go up and down the roads, and so the costs per whatever goes up.
Generally covering the same amount of road, just fewer people to spread that across.
I'm a little cautious to exercise the Washington City vote without some input from the council members and even the community members, and so I'd welcome any feedback from any of you and any of the community, or even any of the staff for that matter, as that issue is going to come around the corner eventually. Any feedback you might have or any opinions, I'd sure be interested in knowing.
Council, I think that'd be a great thing to take to our citizens and be our poll, where we can kind of survey our survey process and survey the citizenry. Probably even include it in our city newsletter that poll is out there, so they can opt in and be a participant in that. Because I would love to know what the fee. At one time, a few years ago, we did look at that, and people were all for it until they found out that there was going to cost an extra $7 or $8, and then suddenly there was no interest, or the interest significantly dropped off.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I really like the concept, and then I realized that it doesn't really stretch the life of the landfill very far, and it actually costs money to recycle. And so if you just look at it from an issue of efficiency, it's not efficient. I mean, it'll cost more and accomplish less, but it will make you feel better about recycling, I guess is kind of how I would summarize it. And so I'm just one person, and I don't really want to exercise that vote without some feedback. And so I like the idea of the survey and whatever feedback we get from there. I don't know if, Roger, you could.
Yeah, and actually what might be an interesting thing to do, it depends on how lengthy, what type of questions, but we've never really done the quick polling through the website, which is actually a very fast way. If it's an extensive survey, we go through the normal Qualtrics survey, but if it's just kind of a couple of 1 or 2 questions, quick surveying is reading and you'll capture more people. And it blocks them out once it picks up their IP address.
See, to me, that'd be a perfect.
Get one.
We've never really used that, but it's a great tool.
Get one, and they're one response, and they're done.
Yeah, on that, it basically is on that computer, but I think the good news is, what we found is as long as you don't necessarily need it to be a representative sample, polling is a great way to do it because you get more response.
The numbers that we were seeing is if it was a mandatory, it'd be about a $4 to $5 per month fee to add that on top of it. And if it were an opt-in or an opt-out, or I guess opt-out, opt-in, I don't know, you'd be about a $7 a month fee. There were some questions raised by the cities that have been receiving these BINI, I don't know if we call them rebates or reimbursements. What would happen with that money? Would we lose that? And the waste district manager explained that those really aren't profits. They're kind of kicking them back for whatever reason, and those profits would still exist. And if cities still wanted to have that type of a kickback, that could be arranged. But the reality is it costs more to recycle than they get. And so what's been happening is the waste district kind of takes care of all the costs, and then the revenues from the recycling materials they've been sharing with the city, even though if they took all those revenues and compared them to the costs, there would not be enough revenues. Yeah, there would not be enough revenues to pay the costs. Anyway, so that's kind of the report there. Roger, if you want me to work with you on those questions, I'm happy to do that. Roger and Chief Hafen and myself met with the Hurricane City Fire Department and the Hurricane Valley Fire District representatives to discuss the shared facility in the Coral Canyon and kind of Walmart distribution area. I thought the meeting was constructive. We shared a lot of concerns and kind of were pretty honest with each other about what things we thought we could or couldn't do. I think we kind of settled on the idea that Washington City and Hurricane would start looking at pieces of property. We'd start talking with some of the stakeholders there. But that once we got past the location and the property issue, we both really liked the concept of a shared facility. The exact final details of the shared facility and whether it would be shared apparatus or we'd house our own apparatus within a facility that we own, those details would still be subject to negotiation and discussion. But the concept would be we'd be building on one site instead of building on two sites, and hopefully we could build a building that would be the right size to facilitate whatever desires we have as far as apparatus. I'm kind of like Councilman Turek. If we have to share all of our apparatus at that place all the time, I'm not sure if there's a benefit there. But if we have a spot to put one or two of our own trucks, and then maybe there's some shared benefits also, I can see some value there. And so those discussions will continue. But it seemed pretty positive, and even the Hurricane Valley District, despite a few, I guess, questions at first, seems to be on board with the concept as well. And so I guess we'll see if we can find a site that might work. And let's say 11. Good. And I don't know if Councilman Turek, if there needs to be a report from the Flood Control Authority.
Well, I don't know if there's a whole lot to
business.
Yeah, we've some of the structures that were actually talked about tonight in our storm drain thing are structures that the Flood Control Authority actually has taken over and are working with the NRCS on rehabilitation and maintenance of those structures, which directly involve our citizens. And to the tune of one of them was about $2.5 million. And of course, some of that comes from NRCS money, some state money, and then of course Flood Control Authority monies are put to that. So some very positive things with flood control, that basically where we have all the cities really working together for the benefit of the whole area. And that's kind of what we set out to achieve, and I think we're doing a pretty good job achieving it. So I don't know if there's anything else we really need to report on unless there's other questions.
Anything? I just wanted to remind you, gentlemen, I sent an attachment yesterday about the RAP tax for your review and consideration, which will be on the ballot in November. So, please. Good call. Thank you.
Ultimately, I think they get their say because it'll be on the November ballot, so they will get a vote.
They will vote. We can get the temperature, though. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Anything
It's
else?
probably a good idea to try and educate people the best we can. I think that would be a great idea.
And before we just follow suit with the other cities, if our citizens don't want it, then
Okay, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of updates that I'll give you on some projects that are going on. As I mentioned, the cemetery is complete. We've already had 4 burials there. That's probably the last time I'll give you a ticker tape on how many burials are going on at the new cemetery, but it's alive and kicking. And we have our Parks Department, of course, working on their capital facilities plan and impact fee schedule. We're probably, just as a kind of a forecast, maybe about October when we'll be bringing that to the council. The Virgin River Trail, we are really just at the point now, the road base is in for the upper end of the trail, and the plan is to start paving on August 25th on that. And then again, lumber is our big issue.
Is the boardwalk in?
No, but we just got notification from the mill today that they will ship, it's 3 shipments they'll send, and the first shipment should ship next week. Now, we've heard that before.
Yeah, that was your report last time.
But I'll tell you, that's kind of at their mercy right now.
Where's it shipping out of?
I don't know the answer to that.
The Northwest, probably.
We're anticipating if that will begin, and I think once the shipments begin, meaning once they arrive, the other 2 will arrive, probably around the end of September, 1st of October, before we would have a completion date on that. And we, kind of like to do something, kind of have a ribbon cutting, things like that, because that is a significant connection between the desert. So, East Regional Water Line, plans are complete. We're working on right-of-way and land acquisition for the pump facility. Probably in your next council meeting, should be prepared to present to the council a resolution for modification of the franchise agreement for Dixie REA in regards to the Sunrise Valley area. And we talked about that quite some time back. But I think we're kind of finally there. It's been a long process, but we've had a lot of moving parts on that too. So if the council was to approve that, then it would go over to, of course, the board, the Dixie REA board, who would then determine, but as I've had discussions with them, they're certainly supportive of that. I don't think it's going to require any modification from the PSC, the Public Service Commission. Dixie, we're not covered by the Public Service Commission, but Dixie is. I don't think it's going to require any modification of them because they were originally certificated that area. They just granted the franchise for that area. So that's kind of wastewater master plan, started the review. 1900 East Lift Station, design has started. Alliance Engineering is the consultants on that. Industrial outfall line, the project is designed. The right-of-way needs to still be acquired. Stormwater is a big one that Public Works is working on right now. So Treasure Valley Trunk Line, they've received the participating fund from the developer and have started the design. Bush and Gudgeon is the consultant engineer on that one. 3090 South Trunk Line will start design in September. Cotton Mill Storm Drain, that project is completed. It's the 18-inch storm drain on the backside of the Cotton Mill subdivision. And the 3650 South Trunk Line, Sunrise Engineering will start design approximately September. Construction started in February. This is probably fairly good news for a lot of you too. On 2000 South and Washington Fields Road, the warrant study is complete and design has started with anticipated advertising for that traffic signal in October. So that's probably good news for a lot of you. Telegraph meetings, we'll start the project with a draft design. Then we'll begin meeting with property owners and businesses that will be affected by those meetings. If you'll remember. Green Spring through turns, those are on the north side, yeah. Just all that area over there. We'll start the environmental project on that in October. And I think I may have mentioned this, and if I haven't, I apologize, but Washington City received funds for the project, $750,000 total, with a 6.7% match to install guardrail along Telegraph Street as you come over from the Highland Hill. So that was safety money. It was granted to the city. We applied for that actually not that long ago, and it was a good award on our part. Washington Fields Road Phase 4, that's from Lost Bridge to 3650 South. We have $1 million in federal money, and we're going to start that project in November. We're currently working on some right-of-way, that particular issue. Milepost 11, probably got to get used to saying that. Milepost 11 continues to work with, we're continuing to work with a consultant at UDOT. Trying to think if there's anything else. The power generation plant is fully functional and not running. And the reason being is because market prices are so low. We're looking at $50 market prices per megawatt right now, and I don't know if I can't even remember the date, in the third quarter of the year, because that's always the highest price power rates in the country. The third quarter of the year that we've seen $50 wholesale megawatt power pricing. So of course our spark spread sits about $62. So when the markets, so we benefit still. We benefit from these low market prices, but we don't run our machines. Hurricane's not running theirs. They're about $55 a megawatt on their spark spread, and they're not even running their machines right now. So the market is very soft on power, which is very good for us. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that covers most stuff.
Any questions for our manager? Not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
I need a second. I need a 5.
True and I. Staley, I think. Turek, aye.
All right, gentlemen, thank you.